We're back at it again with another episode of...
Yeah, another episode of...
What are we calling now, Sherry?
Well, let me tell you something, Jesse. I want to tell you something. And I'm about to tell you something.
What are you about to tell me, Sherry?
That we're changing the name from Socks Optional to Let Me Tell You Something.
How appropriate.
It is, and I love telling you stories, and you seem to like listening. And as long as that relationship continues, I can tell you something.
Sometimes I like listening to the stories. Sometimes I don't really have a choice to listen to the story. Anyway, today...
That's true. It's called respect.
It is respect.
Minion. That's the first
Your minion
rule.
has some respect, and
That's
don't you
good.
forget that.
That's good.
Today we're trying just audio. We're going to see how it goes. And we're going to kick things off with talking about the Super Bowl that took place this past Sunday. Sherry, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, I thought I have more respect for you, Minion, because I thought maybe the middle of the third quarter you might be calling me to gloat.
Do I ever call you to gloat?
No,
you
don't.
call me to gloat.
That's right. No, I didn't call you. I waited till the game was over. But I'm telling you about how respectful. I'm pointing that out to our listeners. You know what I mean?
I'm blushing for our viewers, our listeners out there. I'm blushing.
Who did you pick for the Super Bowl? I just want to recall. I want to refresh my memory here. Who did you pick?
I believe I'm on record taking the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, yeah. And how'd they do?
They lost.
Oh, they lost, eh? Oh, for gosh sakes. Wow.
Their effort was admirable for 3 quarters.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I love admirable efforts. And I like holding the trophy where that guy by the name of Brady held it, and the headline in the Sun was "Deflate This." And there was without question a feeling about what had gone on. We all know what's going on, and the owner even commented about how different the last 2 years were since they won the last one. Which, speaking of winning the last one, it seems to be kind of a habit for the Patriots. I don't know if you followed the history of how well they've done because you're such an Atlanta Falcons fan, but that's fine.
Oh, yeah? Just because I picked the Atlanta Falcons, it means that I'm suddenly a fan of their team?
Well, I don't know that you are, but you aren't anymore. But no, you're a pretty loyal guy. You look at how good they are and stuff like that. You see, the fact is that it's funny, we talked about this earlier on our other shows, about how winning is a habit and their commitment to winning and how the players respect that. And Bill Belichick, winning the Super Bowl and why he's the winningest coach in the Super Bowl history, you had to hear, and we talked about this, you and I visited about this, his comment was, his quote, "As great as today feels and as great as today is after they won it, in all honesty, we are 5 weeks behind in the 2017 season." That tells you about his commitment and how the players recognize that. All the traded players talk about how different it is there. We've visited about it in our previous shows. Okay, there's an atmosphere there. And on Jimmy Fallon and the Tonight Show, he was asked about his face, his serious face, and how intimidating Jimmy said it is. When I see that look on television, it's intimidating to me, he said. And he said...
Your face is pretty intimidating right now, Sherry, but please, sorry, do go on.
Good, but I want it to be because based on how I believe in what the Patriots do, as you know. And so him and Edelman were on the Tonight Show, and he asked him, when do you get serious? Do you put that game face on at 1 o'clock or what? And he said, 24/7, I'm serious. 24/7, not 1 p.m. on game day. And what he said at halftime to his players, and you and I have talked about that, where he said 21 points which is an obvious comment, but when you got your group in there thinking, how are we going to win this thing? Like we're behind, and they talked about some of the adjustments he made. And he said, 21 points isn't going to win this game, so who's getting the most points here? And he challenged his players, and the fact is they believe they can win. Every single player that they interviewed believed that Brady could lead them to it. That's how much that's how important you and I have talked about how important leadership is.
Well, they wouldn't have won the game if they didn't believe in him.
No, that's a really good point. And believed, and they also, it's one thing a couple of rah-rah guys say these things. Every single one of them believed, and they weren't talking about winning the game. I heard they were talking about getting the next touchdown and then getting another. And you could feel it. When they made it 28-20, you could feel that they were committed. And then they win the toss because, hey, they've been through it so much and they know what it takes. They believed in it.
Knowing what it takes, that's the key. And here's a play, Sherry, that we discussed before the show that is going unnoticed, okay? For those of you who don't remember, there were around 3 minutes left in the game. The Patriots were down 28-20. It was 3rd and 10 on their own 9-yard line. Brady found Chris Hogan for a 15-yard completion, which kept the chains moving. Wasn't a touchdown, wasn't talked about very much, but if they miss that play, the Patriots likely lose the game because Atlanta gets good field position. And that, to me, just summarizes Tom Brady. He's clutch. He's as good as it gets, and it's practice, and it's knowing where your players are going to be and getting the ball in their hands, and he just executed it perfectly.
No, the key term of what you said is if. The key term, Minion, is if. If he wouldn't have completed that play, if they wouldn't have done this, if they'd have run the ball, if they'd have done a different thing, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd have a phenomenal holiday season. It's always ifs and buts. I always hear the losers talk about ifs and buts. Ifs and buts. And I'm not into that. Like they made this. The fact is, they made the play. They got it done. And when the Big Mo switched over, Big Mo meant him. Mo meant him. When Big Mo switched over on their side with their belief in winning and with their belief in their leadership, their belief in what it takes, because they've done it before, there was no stopping. And let me tell you something. I hear all about these things, and I think you told me about some reporters or something talking about how Atlanta is going to learn or something. Wasn't it you and I visited about that? Am I correct about that? That you'd...
Yes, we did before the show.
Yeah. And about, what are they, like, learn? Learn. Like, what are they going to learn? I'm concerned whether they'll recover from it, because they got to talk to any of those people that have lost championships. I was listening to some football players that lost the Super Bowl 2-3 years ago. You and I were talking about it. They still think about it today. They were talking about how they never miss a day that they don't think about it. And this is more to think about it. This is not losing the championship. They're thinking about 28-3 with about 18, 19 minutes to go, or whatever the amount of time was, and roughly. They're thinking about, there's a chance they wouldn't be thinking cakewalk, but we can't lose. And then they ended up playing like Atlanta played at the end like they were afraid to lose. And the Patriots played like, we're going to win it. We're going to win it. And when Big Mo got on their side, say goodnight.
Well, if there was any doubt that Belichick and Brady were the best combo in the history of the league, people were silenced.
And let me tell you about remembering. In 1986, we lost the world championship to the Russians. Okay? Yeah, 1986. Won the gold medal the year before. So I've been on both sides. Yeah. I remember them scoring a fluky goal. We were ahead 1-0. And it went off a skate in the net. Changed it. I remember Neuendijk having the puck in the blue paint. The goalie was not in the net. He was serving sandwiches somewhere. I don't know. He was nobody in the net. And he flipped it in from the blue area, hit the crossbar, and never went in. We'd have gone ahead 2-0. Ifs and buts were candy and nuts. If this would have happened, if that, and to this day, how's your math? How's your math, Minion? 1986. I still think about it. It still bugs me. And we talk about if Neuendijk would have scored, if the puck wouldn't have gone off that guy's skate for the for the power play goal with ifs and buts. The issue is winning is a habit. Winning is 100%. Vince Lombardi said it. It's a commitment. Winning for you and the boys behind the desk, it's a commitment if you guys are going to be successful in anything you do. It's an all-the-time thing.
Tom Brady, who's made winning a habit in the NFL more than any other quarterback in history, was drafted 199th overall, passed on by every team multiple times. Sherry, let's take this back to hockey now. You yourself passed on an all-time great hockey player in junior. You passed on Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm known as the guy that didn't draft Gretzky in our organization. And think about if we would have drafted Gretzky. I'd have had two generational players for an old guy like me. And there's a reason, and everybody know how good he was. We had Frank Chiz, our chief scout, who's one of the best judges of talent. And in those days, you could only pick one minor midget. It was full midgets then, 16-year-olds. Now we draft 15-year-olds. But you're allowed to pick one minor midget in the top 3 rounds. And so, obviously, he was a minor midget. He played for the Seneca Braves in Junior B, and that was a property of the Peterborough Petes. They called him up for a few games. You'd love this. We went to watch him playing Major A because you could call him up. And they're telling me, I said, hey, what about Gretzky? And they're saying, oh, he's weak. And he's, weak, all right. I mean, how smart he was. I mean, my dog Newman wasn't alive there, but I had other dogs. They'd have picked him out in a minute. And I'll tell you this. So now we come to the draft. We're going to have the draft. And you're allowed one minor midget. And he was in conversation, obviously. He was a major conversation. And I'm driving on the 401, Kennedy in the 401. Wayne Gretzky is having a press conference from Indianapolis. He's going to play 1 year a junior, and go to the WHA. I was within a half a second of driving into the concrete barrier. And here we are. We had an inter-squad game and lost. That's how bad the Oshawa Generals were. We couldn't beat the Sisters of Minerva. We were picking first, and I'm telling you something I'm thinking. And I remember coming home and calling the owner, because when we first took over, the owner said, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to own. You be the best owner. And I said, what do you think if we don't take Gretzky? And he said, you're the hockey guy.
What was the backlash that happened when you passed?
Backlash was beyond your imagination.
Let's hear it.
I mean, at that time they had 22,000 hourly workers in GM. They all followed the Generals. Remember these junior hockey, which they are today, as I told you, they're the Leafs of their community. And we had such a horrible year before, and I'm a brand new general manager. I was coaching before that. And they're all excited. And we had the draft like the NHL does. Now we do it on the computer. But we're big crowds of people and stuff like that. And everybody thinks it's going to be Gretzky. And I stand up and say, the Oshawa Generals are proud to announce we're drafting from the North York Rangers, Tom McCarthy. Good thing there was gun control, because they all wanted to shoot me. They wanted me shot. You should have heard the radio talk shows.
What was the worst thing you heard about yourself?
Oh, I mean, some people would call in and wanted me beat up, and that I denied them the opportunity to see this star play. It was unbelievable. I mean, you had to understand. My wife, Jean, said, we thought things would happen with our kids at school. I mean, that's all you could listen to. And I was a first-year general manager, and we make that decision. And here they've suffered with 5 wins and 5 ties the year before, because the team a year previous to that lost 16 players out of 19. And now they got this opportunity. They're bitter. They're not upset. They're bitter. And here's the other interesting story. Our first game, Gretzky gets drafted by the Sioux. Our first game is in the Sioux. Opening schedule in the Sioux. We get beat 6-1. Wayne Gretzky gets 3 goals and 3 assists. And our radio guys calling me, and I've always believed when you're in the sport and whatever you're doing, don't run for cover. Don't be there just in the good times.
Unless you're being chased after with pitchforks
Yeah,
and
there's-
fire
or whatever
torches,
it
which
is.
is what I
Yeah.
would have thought about doing
Yeah.
if I was a Jens fan.
Yeah, and so I climbed this ladder to go on the radio, and and the first thing the play-by-play guy said to me, "What'd you think of Gretzky's game?" Now, think about it.
Just making you feel
Yeah,
lousy.
Yeah, like, oh my God, I'm just doing a dance out here. What do you think? You know what I mean? And I looked at him and said, I'd have really been impressed if he'd have got 7 points tonight. And he says, well, he couldn't. They only got 6 goals. Oh, really? I was trying to make light of it. We played them a week or two later in Oshawa. Tom McCarthy gets 3 goals. I'm kind of saying, hey, because we got the additional Rick Lance with our pick. So we were talking about building this team. So we got Rick Lance, who played 11 years in the NHL. Tom McCarthy was the 8th overall pick to make this. We're playing in our building packed because now we're playing against Gretzky. Tom McCarthy gets 3 goals. We're ahead 4-3 with 30-some seconds to go. Gretzky's parked in his office behind the net and passes it out, and they score to tie the game. And we could get, at that time, we could get around 4,000 people in the rink. They were all packed in. 3,900 turned and pointed at me.
With the pitchforks.
Yes, with the pitchforks. And to end this, and not to belabor the whole story, Wayne Gretzky left after a year. The Sioux went to the basement. And, I mean, he was phenomenal. And we all know, and what a respectful guy. I mean, you had to see how respectful he was with me and how he addressed me. I'm talking about later on in life. We went from last third overall and never went under 500 for 13 straight years.
A remarkable decision, and one which more people should know about.
But I'll tell you this, they still talk to me about, you're the guy that didn't draft Gretzky. And when you look back about how great he was, maybe we didn't know how great he was going to be. But
do you regret it?
Well, I know, I regret the fact that I could have been in the company of 2 generational players. I mean, why wouldn't you regret not being around him and so forth? From the building of the team and him leaving, as it turned out for our team, no. But you absolutely regret not being in his company and getting to know him as personal as I got to know McDavid. I mean, think of what a treat that would be for somebody that's been in the sport. So from that point, I absolutely do regret it.
Speaking about generational players, Sherry, we are about to be joined by a person who's had the opportunity to call games for Connor McDavid, Alex DeBrincat, Connor Brown, and Andrei Burakovsky.
And Dylan Strome. I mean,
to name a few.
It's endless of the amount. And came from a raw amateur, which I'm predicting you to be, and our crack staff to call in these games and getting the opportunity happened to be in the place where a lot of these great players played.
Andrew Cooney, play-by-play voice of the Erie Otters. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, gentlemen, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Aaron, good to talk to you. Good to hear from you again.
So, Aaron.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Glad to catch you.
Thanks.
Aaron, a lot of our viewers are in broadcasting themselves, and it's always interesting to hear how a certain broadcaster gets to where they are now. So can you tell us a bit of your backstory and how you got your opportunity with the Erie Otters?
Yeah, it's really funny that our interview comes today because I had on Facebook pop up that 4 years ago I was calling my first hockey games down in Pittsburgh, just a little west of the city at a small rink, center ice arena in Delmont, Pennsylvania, and I was calling it was 10 and under, 12 and under, 14 and under showcases just for this USA Hockey showcase they were having on a weekend, and it kind of took off from there. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into hockey. Unfortunately, where I went to school at Point Park University, they didn't have a hockey team. It was a smaller school, but so I did just about everything they had to offer, covering their sports. So play-by-play for men's and women's basketball, volleyball, baseball, and softball. Really trying to get my hands and get some experience doing just about anything I possibly could. And then just kind of knew that I'll be able to find an opportunity to start doing hockey at some point, as long as, I keep working and keep pushing to find it. Eventually, I landed an internship with a sports talk radio station and gained some contacts there at 93.7 The Fan. Had an internship with the Pittsburgh Penguins radio network and did that. That was the lockout shortened season. And so kind of learned how to make up some content that they were doing on air when there wasn't any games or any hockey being played because of the labor negotiations. And then you had a condensed schedule in the from the winter and into spring. So I worked just about every game for that. And the Penguins went to the Eastern Conference that year, the Eastern Conference Final, against Boston that year. So did everything I possibly could and reached out to learn as much as I could. And then you get to an off season and you just reach out to every team I could find, from the minor leagues to Southern Professional League to junior, and it was the Erie Otters who got back to me. They gave him my shot. Gave a couple interviews, and the Erie Otters were where I've been able to call home for the last couple of years. So it's been looking back with today and 4 years ago to being in a small rink calling a 10-year-old hockey game with a headset that was intended for a handset telephone to where I am now. It's quite a journey, and I can't thank even going with Sherry, the Erie Otters organization, giving me that opportunity and to hop in as a young kid fresh out of school and to hopefully making them proud.
Well, no question, Laird. I mean, it was not only good for you, it was good for us, because you really developed into a first-class play-by-play guy, and you do your homework, and this is what we preach all the time. And, so it was a good marriage here. And I remember when we were discussing you, I was telling Jesse here, and I said, people were saying, well, he's got no experience. And I said, well, how did you get started? Like, if I wouldn't have got a chance, I would have never had any experience. And so, which has always been my philosophy, to give it to good young people. That's what we're trying to do here, Jesse and I, and our tech guys that are good people. And so it's been good for everybody.
And Aaron, I just want to wish you a happy 4-year anniversary, because I actually remember when I came down to Erie with my little brother and my dad, and I saw what you had to broadcast games with, and I was kind of scratching my head because the equipment wasn't exactly what we're used to seeing today.
Yeah, it's you use what's given to you, and even though it was some of the older equipment, at least getting started, it is what it is. It still works, gets you across the line. You still sound good coming across the air and using the phone line still. And it's nothing against the team and everything, but hey, that's what you have with you, and all you need is as long as I'm getting on air, it's more about what I can do and how I'm going to call a game than the equipment. You can have all the bells and whistles and top-notch stuff, but if you don't have the will and to work and to better yourself, I mean, it doesn't matter what equipment you can use. And I could be hooking up two tin cups to a string, but it's going to get people listening and they're going to tune in to hear me, then so be it.
Good for you. Good for you.
So we've talked about some of the equipment, but now let's talk about some of the players. What was it like for you, and what was going on in your head before your first call? And what goes on in your head before you would call a game for a guy like Connor McDavid or Connor Brown, or even now Alex DeBrincat?
The first game, getting off the bus, we were in Guelph. The Otters ended up losing that game in overtime, 4-3. But it was Chris Hartsburg, the assistant coach with the Otters, my first year, that year around, and he was the first one to say something to me as I got off the bus, and it was just, "Hey, Cooney, how you feeling right now?" Of course, there was a lot going through my head once you get across the border, and I had about 2 hours to be like, okay, this is actually happening now. We're going on the air, and it's coming up here pretty quick. So the jitters and everything, I think that gets to you. At least that first game, it was a little nervousness, and you're trying to wander around the building and find where I got to set up. Because a lot of that first year was figuring stuff out on your own and hoping to find somebody that can show you where to go. But as soon as you sit down, and it was closing in on pregame show. But once that phone rings, pick up, the intro plays, and it's time to start talking. it just kind of takes over naturally, And then once you get to a pregame show, you play an interview, then you get to the game, and then it's just painting the picture just like I had been doing with basketball and all these other sports that I called during college, and even the smaller, younger hockey games and younger kids that I called in some of the high school games and that showcase I mentioned from years ago. The game, it just takes over, and you just go about what you've been doing.
Also, the excitement. I mean, you start to call, and you all of a sudden you're calling names like Burakovsky and McDavid and Brown. You know what I mean? And it goes on and on. There's a phenomenal list of players there that have been playing there, 350-win seasons, and now, and with all the records that have been set, and the Stromes and the DeBrinkets, I mean, not many guys get to come from calling a 10-year-old game to be able to describe the picture for those superstars.
I feel bad for some of the guys. It's other radio guys you meet, and it's like, well, my first 3 years, back-to-back 50-win seasons, and this group. I mean, the first year you're led with McDavid. You mentioned Burakovsky, but you can't forget guys. The top line, Brown, Fox, and McDavid. By the time we finish the season,
yeah.
I mean, Dane Fox fought at 64, almost a goal per game on that year. Connor Brown setting a record, and the franchise record in points for that season. I mean, you had Brendan Gaunce at one point. He's at Vancouver right now, and he was playing the third line with Dylan Strome moving up the ranks a little bit. He was playing on the second line with Burakovsky and Michael Curtis. And that was just year one. And it goes from there in that second year with Connor McDavid, and it's not even just what was going on the ice. And for other young broadcasters who are listening, at least in my position, it was doing, he's not even the radio, but Bass, you remember that farewell tour with McDavid, and every rink we stopped in, people loaded, we couldn't get to the bus that we were trying to get him through. It was incredible, the memories that I take away just, from that alone, and from calling all these monumental achievements that these guys have performed on the ice. I can't describe as how lucky and I got, and how just timing worked out, and I was blessed to be the guy that's been watching these guys go from this league and then shooting straight up to the stratosphere into the next league, into the NHL.
Now, Aaron, you mentioned a lot of accomplishments that you've seen, and you mentioned a lot of good players that have moved on to the NHL. But there's another player on the Otters who is barking on a major accomplishment, which is recording his third 50th goal season in a row, Alex DeBrincat. And we've seen a lot of good players come through the Otters organization to the NHL and make a name for themselves at that. Is Alex DeBrincat the next Otter who is on the list?
I think for sure. I mean, we know Dylan Strome's going to be with the big club next year, just due to the player sharing agreement he's with the Erie Otters to finish things up. But yeah, Alex, of course, I think a lot of people, even coming into this league, they doubted Alex DeBrincat because of his stature and his size. He wasn't going to be there. So you proved doubters wrong that first year. Okay, this guy just put in 51 goals, 104 points. Oh, but he was doing it with Connor McDavid. Okay, so we'll see what he does the next year. Proves people wrong again, but you can get it done with whoever's on the line, pops another 50 goals. And it's like, okay, so he did. That time it was with Dylan Strome. Well, he did the majority of this year. The first half, majority because Dylan was even here, only played a handful of games and was off at the World Juniors with captain of Canada. And DeBrincat still finds the back of the net and is just 6 away from another 50-goal season. He's continued his entire career is improving people wrong.
Yeah.
Size doesn't matter. The guy he gives you everything he has on every single shift that he's out on the ice. He knows where to go, find the soft spots on the ice to get open, and to clearly knows how to finish. And he's just that smart on the ice. And I think you see a lot of other players in this league that they want to line this guy up and they really want to get him good. But he is so smart and can sense what's going on around him. He knows who's on the ice around him, and he knows to keep himself and how to protect himself while he's out there and not put himself in a vulnerable position. And it's bode that well for him. this year, and he's going to continue that, I think, to the next
Yeah,
level and beyond.
And not only that, these are like NHL goals that he's scoring the other day. Like, he got 11 points in 3 games, and under the crossbar, he's played left wing, right wing, when played center when the centers were out or whatever it is. He played the point on the power play different times. I mean, the only thing he hasn't done is play-by-play on that team. So I'm sure you don't want him to do that. But, I mean, the point is that, you know, everybody, I think you made the great point. Every time he's got to prove himself at 5'7". But we don't have stretchers, and he knows that. And that's always held against the smaller guys. And ask Cam Atkinson. And so you can go through a lot of them. And I definitely think that was a heck of a pick for Chicago in the second round. And he's going to prove it. He's had to prove himself all the time. And it's just a good story, too. And, you know, you like to see those things happen to young people. And he's got the preparation and the drive, just like you say. And you're lucky you see it every day. We just have to pick it up. And, and good on you and say, but listen, I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And for what you've done there and where you've come from, I think we could spot that because it's in you as a person, and there's no question you're going on to bigger and better things. And we really appreciate you joining us.
Matt, I really appreciate the kind words there, and I appreciate the opportunity you gave me. And thanks, guys, for having me on. And hopefully we can keep doing this. You know, you got me. I'm a subscriber on iTunes and waiting for the next episodes popping up. So I'll be listening.
Well, we are thankful for your support, Aaron. It means a lot to us as well.
And keep punching. Good to talk to you.
Wow. So it sounds like the real key to Aaron's success was versatility and hard work, of course.
Well, hey, listen, you and I have talked about this a lot. For this young staff that we got here and yourself. I mean, it's no different from sports or medicine or law or business. It's a commitment to excellence. It's prepared to do the extra. Gladwell, 10,000 hours, all the work that it takes. It's no different. It's not unique in the sports that we're talking about. And DeBrincat is a heck of a story. I mean, a heck of a story.
And how'd you find him, Bass? Because I'm pretty curious about that.
Well, you know, when we talk about finding him and so forth, the interesting thing is he played for Lake Forest Academy, I think, which is a high school, if I remember correctly, which is in Chicago. He's from the Detroit area. Our chief scout, Scott Halpin, he knew about him. He'd seen him before. But we didn't go to watch him. We went to watch one of our prospects. And it was in Sioux, Michigan, and we had 2 prospects up there playing, one in Sioux, Michigan, one in Sioux, Ontario. It was snowing, it was cold. I didn't have any socks on.
Are we surprised by that?
No, I'm not. I'm not sure that you're surprised about it.
You're not wearing socks right now either. So.
And so the thing is this, so we go in there, and I say to Scott Halpin, our chief scout, our prospect, this guy better be a prospect. Okay? And I went to talk to the coach of the Lake Forest team, and I said, "You got any prospects?" And he said, "We got this kid DeBrincat. He's going on, got a full ride. University of Mass." I said, "Really?" I looked at him, 5'7". You know how you make remarks? Hey, we got to, this guy better be a player, because, you know what I'm saying? Because you're making remarks like, because if he's not a hockey player, he can be a jockey. And, I'm going to the stands, and we go in there, and we're really going to concentrate on our prospect. That I was disturbed about how his head coach was dressed and stuff like that. But the example he was setting. But anyway, aside from that, well, this guy is just explosive. He gets 3 goals and 2 assists. He's taking faceoffs. He's doing everything that we just talked about. I mean, he's back checking. You had to see it, playing different positions. Wow. I looked over at Scott Halpin and said, "This guy hasn't been drafted or anything?" No, and he knew him from the Detroit area, because Scott Halpin is a really sharp scout. That's a science. Everybody talks about scouting. Scouting is a science. So we've got a game the next morning, and they're 20-minute periods. We come in, we haven't eaten breakfast or anything like that to see the game. Nobody in the rink. Hardly. This guy's phenomenal again. So we're talking about where we're going to go have lunch. And I said, we're going down to this guy's dressing room to have lunch. Didn't come all the way here. I asked the coach if I could talk to him. Very, very respectful of the coach and so forth. And he says, absolutely. He come out. We talked to him a little bit. I said, I hear you got a scholarship at UMass. He said, yes, I do, sir. Thank you. And I said, good for you. I said, would you ever think about playing in the OHL with Connor McDavid, I could say at the time? And he said, I would. Well, I was just taken like right there in I would think about it. So I'm old-fashioned, not like all the technology you know. I get the program out with a pen and write his phone number down and say, hey. So, and they had to go because they were playing another game that afternoon in Wisconsin. So everything's fine, I'm going to contact him and so forth, and we're there to see other prospects, and we're there for the weekend, and I'm up to date here, and I'm not paying any attention. And Monday, I get a call from Jeff Jackson, who's the number one guy for Bobby Orr's agency here. A bright guy. I mean, and he said, I hear you've been talking to DeBrincat. Here, I'm thinking this is very private. Now, you haven't seen me speechless very often. We've known each other.
It is rare to see you speechless, Bass.
I'm just overwhelmed because this has got to be a secret because then everybody can get him as a free agent and they find out about it. And I say to Jax, if this gets out, you and I have a long relationship with Jeff Jackson. He played on the team that we won a gold medal, and he's a lawyer, a bright guy, and a good person. And I said, how'd you find out about him? He said, well, a friend of mine was at the rink whose son plays at Lake Forest, and he said he saw me talking to DeBrincat, and he called Jeff Jackson for the Orr agency. Well, then the whole process that you have to go through, you got to understand we got a draft coming up. He's not on the draft list, so they can't draft him. Once you go through 2 drafts, you're a free agent. If you're a free agent, anybody can get you. So then before you do that, you have to wait for the draft. So I've asked him I went and met with his parents. Jackson set that up. Jackson was a big part of us getting him, a very confidential coffee shop, and that I would come by casually, happen to be in the area. Spent 2-3 hours with the parents, spent time with the kid, called them again, visited with them again, got to keep it a secret. I asked him to keep it a secret, or if he makes it public, he can go anywhere. I was very straight up with him. Obviously, we wanted it. It's a heck of a story. And then the parents agree, and we still can't sign them because we got to wait for the draft. Then we got to invite them to the fall camp. Once you register that with the league, then you can sign him.
But you had in your mind already that there was a good chance he would be playing with Connor McDavid in the future.
Oh, yeah, there's no question.
What was it about DeBrincat at the time that made him such a good fit to play with Connor?
Intelligence, commitment, knew how to get open.
Speed?
The first, without question, is speed, but more than that, too, he was responsible on both ends of the rink. And you could see, and it just jumped out at you with what kind of a player he was. And consequently, went through all that, got him signed. Jeff Jackson was a big part of cooperating, the family and all the visits. And so, bingo, bango, bongo, he's a second-round pick for Chicago. High second-round pick. They had somebody else's pick.
It's incredible how some athletes' careers turn out.
Oh, I mean, and he's such a good family and such a good kid. You want him to be successful.
Well, you think, what if he did end up taking the college route, and would he really become the same player or develop the same way? So, good on you, Sherry. You really found a diamond in the rough.
Well, it was the organization, and Scott Halpenny knew him, but it turned out, I was glad he took me up there to see our prospects, because the result was, and they just signed one of those prospects as a defenseman that was playing at Lake State. So the whole weekend was great.
Wow, was it ever. All right, Sherry, let's move on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who played against the Dallas Stars on Tuesday night. They won 3-1 after allowing a bunch of goals in their previous 3 contests. So, Sherry, you were telling me before the show about how angered you are with all of these bandwagon jumpers with the Maple Leafs. Do you want to go into a bit more detail on that?
Well, I mean, if you listen to people, jumping off and on the bandwagon, a lot of work for the orthopedic surgeons.
Ha.
a lot of surgeries there because of broken bones jumping on and off.
Any hair transplants?
And no, as a matter of fact, I don't know about the hair transplants, but I know a guy that can do it. So, but anyway, the real thing is this.
You're the guinea pig.
Yeah, I was the guinea pig in that story, and I didn't know what was happening. Everybody was. You found it on YouTube, didn't you?
Yeah, it had a whole 72 views. We were very fortunate to find it. Our crack team found it.
Yeah. So and so that there I am, and as the guinea pig and having fun about it, and but I've always I have a line about this, God created very few perfect heads. The rest he covered up with hair. I just want you to know that. Okay? And so, anyway.
You still got a couple hairs up there, but.
Yeah, but the real issue is about the Leafs and the bandwagon here. And the real issue here about that is when they went on that 3-game spin, people were saying, talking about Anderson again and quoting his average for that streak, because you and I have visited since we've been together about how important goaltending is. But the real secret was the way the team was playing. Even though Anderson there were certain key saves he could have made, and he'd be the first to tell you that, it was the way the team was playing. On the wrong side of the puck, on the wrong side of the opposition. And everybody loves to watch him play. The fans love that open style. Okay, even the press love it. All this young talent playing tic-tac-toe, how's your mama with the puck? Everything the only people that didn't like it, the coaching staff.
Elaborate on that, Sherry, because Babs had some words to say about his team on the weekend.
He said, it's not about racing to 10 each night. This is a quote. It might look good in the personal stats. Personal stats don't add up to winning, he said. What you do as a team is what's important. You sacrifice some individual rights for team rights. To me, we weren't good enough. And then they come back and win 3-1. If you've followed sports a lot in the NHL and hockey, playoff games aren't won 6-5, very seldom. The odd game might get away from you. Playoff games are won 2-1, 3-1, 3-2. Playing 200-foot game, making sure that there's not real open chances. Limit the chances to them. You know that the other team's going to get some chances. But these guys were playing pond hockey, and we all loved it. And they got into a problem.
Defensively, they've been playing poorly ahead of Anderson, and it certainly appears as though Anderson was dealing with some issues in between the pipes, and obviously he had the night off as in the team's win over the Stars. But let's take a look at another team in the division now, Sherry. Claude Julien fired from the Boston Bruins. There are an array of good coaches on the market now. Ken Hitchcock, Gerard Gallant. Do you agree with the firing in Boston, Sherry?
I don't think it's, Claude Julien's been there 10 years. So
former player of yours.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Normally the life of a coach in the NHL is a lot less than 10 years. And there's been rumors about him for a long time. It's an aging team. But I'm going to tell you what. This guy, as Babcock said, this guy is a phenomenal coach. He knows the game. He's a hard worker. You talk about the will to prepare. His ability to say, he played for me. One of the worst trades we ever made. We traded him when he was a 19-year-old to get some other star. You just don't have a substitute for this, what he's about. And here's the key thing about it. Whatever Boston did, because it looked like there was too much talk in the press about this, that it didn't seem secure for him anyway. He's going to land on his feet. Good coaches with good work ethics and good character like he has, he's going to be back at it. Make no mistake about it.
Well, who's going to be the team that's aggressive enough to go in and lure him in?
I think that he's going to sit back. I don't think... I'm sure a number of teams are going to talk to him. All the teams that we hear about. to say who's going to be aggressive. I think he's going to be in every team's conversation that's looking for a coach. I think that it's incumbent upon him, because of the status that he's earned through hard work and his position at what a good coach he is, he's going to look for the right marriage. I really believe that. And he's just such a good person, such a work ethic. You know, he's not flamboyant. He's not talking. You never hear him talking about himself. He's not one of those guys in the press a lot. But he's a heck of a coach. And in answer again to your question, not to repeat it, I think he's going to look for the proper marriage.
So what do you think is the proper marriage out of the potential opportunities?
You know, I don't know. Like, does he want to start from scratch and work with the team and build it for the next 3 or 4 years? You know, which could happen in Las Vegas. You know, I think that, you know, when I've looked at all these teams and so forth, that we have different dissections what those teams are all about. You know, like, does he want a team that's close to getting there? That's, you know what I mean? That he feels strong enough that there's enough good young talent that can develop, and there's some good players that are in their 28, 30s, and I think he's going to look at all those factors, and he's going to look at the management people too that hire about what their foresight is, what their judgment is about the team, because when you get together with people, you have to have. There's got to be a matchup here about what we all foresee here, and what do we have to do to get to the promised land. Do we have to sacrifice when we take over a team certain things? Because it's like, you know, or are we just building a team from scratch and trying to get there and be real competitive in 4 or 5 years and be in a position to do certain things? Those are all characteristics. So for me to say, when I hear all these people talking about, oh, this team, or you could go to this team, you could go to that team, I think the things we're talking about are going to be dissected before he goes anywhere.
It's something that people really don't pay enough attention to is, oh, this coach is going to go there. They have they have a vacancy,
Right.
But no, you got to think about it from the coach's perspective.
Sure.
Like, does a coach really want to walk into a mess, kind of like what Boston has become?
Yeah.
Does a coach necessarily want to play under a general manager like Don Sweeney, who, in a way, has not? I mean, he has not improved the franchise at all. What has that guy done to make the Boston Bruins a better team?
Good
so.
point.
I definitely agree with you, and Julien will definitely fall back on his feet, and he will have that choice of where he wants to go to, because he is arguably the best candidate on the market right now.
And I'm sure not only it's like Babcock coming to Toronto, he had to make sure that their foresight and their values and their understanding and what they see matches his, and what they had there, and Lou Lamorellas and all that staff coming together and working together. And make no mistake, Claude Julien isn't looking for a job. It's not like we got to take it. When you're going to take your first major job, you're going to take a job to prove yourself. Claude Julien doesn't have to prove himself. He's going to look for the right match.
Oh, people are going to be looking for Claude Julien.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to think, if the Florida Panthers are even, although they have a good roster, if they're an appetizing organization to go to, considering what happened earlier in the season with their former head coach. Bit of a mess.
But, I mean, the thing is this. The real issue to do here when I see, you know, don't talk to me about Florida because I'm really upset about how that was all handled for Glenn. I know Glenn. He's one phenomenal coach. But those pictures of him looking for a cab and stuff like that after a game, and for what, you know, here's the thing we've always said. Not only does there have to be justice when things happen, there has to be an appearance of justice. And when they terminated him, there was not an appearance of justice. There may have been reasons why he was out taking a cab. They may have, but there was no appearance of justice. And so, I mean, this guy he's won a Memorial Cup, and then you can see the way the players play for him. That's another thing when they talk about players coach. That doesn't mean he's rah-rah. That means they believe in what he's all about, his value system.
Brad Marchand even said that about Julien,
Mm-hmm.
about his exit.
They don't want to, it's not like they just don't want to let him down. They want to play for him. They want to work for him. But listen, I told you before, people talk about good coaches and bad coaches. My definition of a good coach, give him some talent. If he screws it up, he's a bad coach. And so we all know, because Claude Julien's proved it, when you give him some talent, he can win.
Well, we'll have to wait and see where he decides to go to, whether it's this year or it's next year. Sherry, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and take care.
Hey, see you next week. Keep punching.